techniques to optimize your vendor deals. This presentation will provide actionable, objective insight, expert guidance, and solutions that enable faster, smarter decisions and stronger performance on your most critical priorities. I'm Jillian Page, your moderator for this session. And before we get started, I have a few tips to help enhance your webinar experience. Around the video player, you'll find a variety of ways to interact with the session. We encourage you to participate by clicking the Ask the Speaker box to submit your questions and thoughts throughout this program. You can either submit a question anonymously, or if you choose, your name, title, and company can be visible along with your question. To download a copy of the presentation slides and other helpful resources, just navigate to the bottom of the page. Throughout the program, you can rate the session and share feedback on the insights provided. To submit your rating, locate the Rate Session link below the player. A box will open for you to select 1 to 5 hearts. Please note that 5 hearts is the top rating. And share your feedback on the insights provided in the Leave Further Feedback box and click Send. This webinar is being recorded. You can watch this presentation again and find more great insights on demand at Gartner.com/IT webinars. And now I would like to introduce Gartner Distinguished Vice President Analyst Joanne Rosenberger. Joanne, thank you so much for joining us. And now I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Jillian. I appreciate it. Well, welcome everyone. I want to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world and whatever time zone. It's just an absolute pleasure to welcome you and to be able to spend this next hour walking you through this cheat sheet. Now, let's talk about, first of all, why do you need a negotiation cheat sheet or a negotiation playbook? And quite honestly, that's what you can think of when we walk through these 10 powerful tips and techniques. This cheat sheet can be a negotiation playbook for you to use to plan for both new deals and renewals. But, right now, the way they're in the state of the economy, there's economic uncertainty, there's impacts of inflation. This is a time where when we have client calls, we're seeing a lot of exorbitant increases coming through. And people are upset about it. People are worried about it because, 5, 6, 7 years ago, if you even got a 5% increase year over year on a renewal, you would think, wow, that's really exorbitant. That's way too high. Today, for many of the vendors, let's take our software and SaaS mega vendors such as Microsoft, ServiceNow, Salesforce, Adobe, Broadcom, we're seeing increases that can range anywhere from 5% up to 30, 40, 50% increases. Now, I don't want to scare you because don't assume you're going to get 50, 60, 70% increases from every vendor, but you have to be ready. And that's what it takes. It takes proactive planning to prepare for both renewal and new deal negotiations. And this cheat sheet is going to give you some great tips and techniques to do just that. Now, as Jillian mentioned, you will have access to this deck that I'm going to share with you. And I love that for you because when I create a presentation, I always try to make each slide actionable. I also have a few little gifts for you that I'll be sharing via screen that my little gift for attending today that you can actually also download in the attachment sections. So with that, I'm going to make it nice and easy. We're going to walk through the cheat sheet. And this cheat sheet is comprised of 10 tips and techniques. I'm going to call these tips and techniques the TNTs going forward. And like I said, we're going to make it nice and simple. I'm going to walk through each one by one. Okay, let's get started with cheat sheet item number 1, TNT number 1. So this isn't something that most of you don't already know, but creating a competitive environment is one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful tactic and strategy you can use for leverage and bargaining power during negotiations. Now, it wasn't an accident that this became the first TNT when I built this cheat sheet. In fact, I did this very purposefully because even though most people know creating a competitive environment is powerful, I don't see everyone using it effectively or advantageously, particularly on renewals. Many times I will have client calls and I will talk about various alternatives, competitors to the vendors and the products I cover. And I'll say, have you investigated some of these alternatives, some of these other solutions? And what I'll hear quite honestly on most renewals is people will say, well, we can't switch. And then when I dig a little deeper and say, well, have you ever done a switching cost analysis? Most of the time the answer is no, but we just don't think we can, or we don't want to. Okay, that's fair. I'm not saying move off your products. If you love them and they're working great for you, by all means, I'm not trying to say move off them, but here's the key. Here's the point. If you could, if it's viable, if it's feasible to migrate off, to move to another alternative, another solution, you can use that as part of your negotiation strategy. Use that if it's feasible. Now, let's go a little further with this. Let's say that you've spent a lot of time and effort, money, internal training, systems integration, a lot of costs. Maybe you've used consulting, implementation, customization to get products and services up and running and customized for your environment. Chances are that if you tried to actually use competition and you're using it as kind of a bluff to say, well, hey, if you don't lower our price, we're going to move to XYZ competitor. Chances are the vendor may not believe you. But here's the key. I always tell sourcing and procurement leaders or whoever's leading the negotiation, make sure you're sitting down with IT and your key stakeholders so that you are evaluating whether, alternatives and other solutions are feasible. If so, use it to your advantage. Let me share a little tip with you. Vendors have told us at Gartner that when they receive an RFP, that their VP of sales for that region or their executive management team delegates the authority to the local sales team to give better pricing, deeper discounts, because the RFP is giving them evidence that it's competitive. And I always say, go one step further. In your RFP, state right in the beginning or in the cover page, this is a competitive bid offering. So I know I've gone a little overboard here, but I want to emphasize how important it is to be thinking about renewals and renewal time. What are alternatives and other solutions that are viable or feasible for your organization? Another thing that I've shared with clients not too long ago, a couple months ago, I was looking at a client's proposal, and it just so happened that during a proof of concept engagement, the vendor had actually increased the SaaS pricing. And so they were very upset about it. And I said, well, let's not get upset. Everything's negotiable here. I said, now, as I look at your business case, it looked like you could build. They said, yeah, we could build, but we want to buy. We love this vendor. And, this is really where we want to go. I said, okay, fair. But here's the point. If you could build, use that as part of the negotiation strategy. You're now adding one more competitor to the mix, yourself, if you could still build. Now, they like that, and it worked beautifully for them from a negotiation standpoint. Another thing that I want to talk to you about is third-party support. We have been getting more and more and more calls about how do I use third-party support, hardware maintenance, for example. Also, on the software side, If you've got IBM, Microsoft, Oracle, SAP, or VMware, and you have retained your perpetual licenses, well, then you have an opportunity to cut your costs at least 50% by going third party. Again, is it viable and feasible in your organization? If you don't need to be on future versions, then absolutely it is a way to cut costs. Now, it is also a way to create leverage because the vendors on the OEM side, they don't want to lose you. They don't want to lose you to a third party provider, but great way to save money and great way to create leverage as well. One last thing I want to mention to you is on the services side. And my first gift to you that I'm going to send you is a great slide here. Think of this as a mini cheat sheet for preparing for any kind of IT services negotiations. I'm giving you a list of all the key IT services competitors. And I love the way this is laid out. One of my colleagues developed this that covers the managed services, infrastructure outsourcing, application maintenance services space. And it's laid out in 3 sections. First of all, who are the competitors and the alternatives for digital business consulting, engineering, application services? Also, what about implementation and managed services? What about infrastructure outsourcing, infrastructure support, and maintenance services? Great little guide for you, and I think you're going to find this helpful. Last thing I want to say about this TNT number 1 is when it comes to the services side, take a look at our labor rate calculator. It's amazing. I don't want to take credit for it because I didn't develop it, but I share it quite frequently. And I love it because what it tells you is wherever the work, the services, they're being performed, we give you what the hourly rate you should be paying by skill level for that region. If work's being done in the U.S., we give you the U.S. rates. If work's being done in India, for example, we give you those rates. So it's by region. If you're not aware of it, ping your account team or me and say, boy, love to see the labor rate calculator, and we'll get it over to you. Okay. With that, I think I've given you and emphasized how important the competitive environment is. So I hope you got a few good tips and tactics for how to create the competitive environment. Let's move on to TNT number 2. Now, those of you that know me or have heard me present before, I'm sure you've heard me say, if you don't ask, you don't get. I'm always emphasizing how important it is to ask, not only asking vendors, but asking your internal stakeholders key questions as well. In particular, this TNT number 2 is focused on asking vendors the right questions. Simply put, one pricing model doesn't fit all deals, nor does one contract or agreement type fit all deals. Here's a great example for you on the pricing model side. Many times the vendor sales teams are more highly compensated on selling you a specific model or a specific contract option. For example, not too long ago, I was helping a client, and we were looking at a prepay offer from a vendor where they said, if you would prepay and lock into a 5-year agreement, we can give you much deeper discounting. And this client said, gosh, we probably could prepay, but I'm not sure we want to. What do you think, Joanne? Is this a great deal? So I said, well, let's do 2 things. I said, let's go back because I know this vendor still offers pay as you go, buy as you need. Let's have the vendor prove it to you. Let's have them show you what it would be if you didn't prepay, but you bought and you paid as you go for 5 years. Well, the vendor came back and showed them that, and it looked like they were saving about $300,000 if they prepaid. Client said, I guess that's pretty good. I said, problem is, they didn't do this analysis right. If you're comparing a pay-as-you-go stream to a prepay, you've got to take into account the time value of money. I said, let's do this let's take one more step at this, and let's calculate the net present value of the 5-year pay-as-you-go stream, compare that number to the prepay, so you have apples to apples, today's cost of money. What we realized by doing that is it was only $100,000 difference. That equated to like a 4% discount. Client went back and said to the vendor, look, there's no way we would pay you all this money up front for a little 4% discount. We calculated this based on net present value. And vendor said, okay, fair. Anyway, they ended up getting, and this was a pretty hefty deal in the millions, they ended up getting the deal $400,000 cheaper just by using net present value. Bottom line here is that if you're getting a prepay offer or tiered pricing or multi-year commitment or pay as you go, that may not be the only option. Let's ask for all options. Now, let me give you an example of why I'm making a big deal about one contract type doesn't fit all deals. Let's take a vendor that you do business with regularly and the master agreement. You've probably negotiated a great master agreement with standard terms and conditions, but also you've negotiated perhaps some value add concessions, etc. In most cases, let's say that this vendor has come out with, a pretty cool new offering. And your IT folks say, yeah, wow, you know what? We want to engage in a proof of concept, a proof of value engagement, just to test this out. Vendor's ready to do this. Well, quite honestly, a proof of concept engagement, those terms are most likely not going to be in a master agreement. So you would want to make sure you've got a proof of concept agreement before you allow the proof of concept engagement to begin. And the other reason that this is extremely important is to be sure you're getting terms and conditions agreed upon before the proof of concept engagement begins, so that you don't have worries after. What would be the deal breaker terms? Another little gift I'm going to give you related to this tip and technique number 2 is a nice SaaS and cloud terms and conditions checklist at a glance. Now, if you're a Gartner client, you'll see a link to this, and you can get the full-blown toolkit that describes every one of these terms. But this is a nice guide for you, because what you should be doing before a proof of concept engagement begins is sitting down with those IT and those business folks and asking them, look, if this proof of concept engagement is a success, which of these terms are going to be critical to the contract? Get that out and upfront and in the vendor's eyes before the proof of concept begins. You don't have to have perfect legalese in your proof of concept agreement, but if you can agree in principle, for example, I'll just grab one of these right now. Data access protections. You want that agreed upon if the proof of concept is a success. So let's get the fact that they would agree to these data access protections as a sign off before the POC begins. It will save you a lot of time and energy. And perhaps if the answer is no to these, you might not even want to engage in the POC. So I've been sharing that tip for a couple of years now with clients, and a lot of them have actually changed their process on how they allow POCs to begin in the organization. So bottom line here, you need to ask and be sure you're asking the right people in the vendor organization, know when to ask, how to ask, and who to ask. Trust me, when your vendors are asking questions of you and your stakeholders, they are fabulous at that. They know what to ask, when to ask, how to ask, and who to ask, because they're very highly skilled at doing that. So you want to do the same. So again, I've got a couple more gifts for you. The SAS terms and conditions checklist, but I'm also giving you, now this is just to bring this to life, the fact that one pricing model doesn't fit all deals. Now, everybody buys software. That's why I'm giving you a software RFQ template. And it's easy. This isn't anything complicated, but what I've done is I've asked questions in the template so that it is what I like to call pulling back the covers to expose hidden, missing, often ambiguous details that may prevent you from analyzing the proposal effectively. So I think you'll like this, and I think you'll find it helpful if you're not already asking these questions in your RFQs and RFPs. Okay, let's keep rolling. Now, this might sound a little hokey, but I always tell clients, in order to be great negotiators, you've got to really be great detectives. Hone in on those investigative skills. Like I said a couple minutes ago, your vendor sales teams, they're fabulous at this. They're highly trained, highly skilled. Some vendors have told me that they train their salespeople in negotiating. They have sessions twice a year. And they know what questions are the right questions to ask, and they find out what it is that motivates you, motivates IT, motivates the business teams. Well, you want to find out, well, what motivates you, Mr. or Miss Sales Team? And this is a nice checklist for you with some great questions to ask. Now, just last week, I was visiting a client, doing a day of some workshops and on negotiating. And I shared this with them. And one of the folks in the room raised their hand and said, I don't know. I don't know if I'd feel comfortable asking someone how they get compensated, how they get paid. Is that okay to ask them? And I say, absolutely. It's common knowledge that sales teams have compensation plans, compensation packages. Maybe they're paid salary. Maybe they're paid commission. Maybe they've got a hybrid approach. How do they get their bonuses? Some get a monthly, quarterly. Sometimes the bonuses or the spiffs change on how they're incentivized. Well, here's what I used to teach my sourcing and procurement team to do before I joined Gartner. I've been with Gartner 15 years. And I would coach and mentor people within my organization when I managed sourcing and procurement on how to be better negotiators. So I would guide them in this way. Now let's pretend that I'm the lead negotiator. So I would start with the icebreaker like this. So I'm talking with the sales team. So we're going to be working together for a while. And, this is a major renewal, plus, new products, new services. And I sincerely want to make this a win-win for both of us. I'm compensated a certain way. You're compensated a certain way. So, let me start with myself. Let me tell you a little bit about me. What motivates me? Well, I'm measured each year on how well I balance cost, risk, and value for my organization on every contract, every deal I negotiate. Cost? Can I show that there were savings to budget? How about cost avoidance? Value. What value adds was I able to, with your help, Mr. and Miss Vendor, with your help, was I able to add to the contract, those value add concessions? Risk. How well did I mitigate risk with those tight protective terms and conditions? Now, I measured on that for every contract I negotiate, and my bonus and sometimes my merit increase is based on that. So boy, that's what motivates me. Now I'd love to know about you. Now I know every sales team has a compensation plan. Love to know about yours. And, I'm not trying to be really invasive here, but the more I know about you, the more helpful it can be for us to help each other. And guess what? If you ask in that manner, they're going to tell you. You're going to get a lot of great information. So this is a great guide for you to do this. Now, you might feel a little nervous at first, saying, how do you get compensated? But if you do this in a nice way and they know you're sincere, they're going to open up to you. Give it a try. Most clients say after they've done this a few times, they're comfortable and they find it to be fun. So again, hone in on those investigative skills. Be better detectives. And by asking these questions, you will be. Now let's move to TNT number 4. Now, this is going to go hand in hand when I get to TNT number 8. And this is emphasizing how much great information you can get from vendor websites. Well, one website page that most vendors will publish is their investor relations website page. Now, not every vendor will publish their financial results, but those that are publicly held, publicly traded, and your medium to large vendors will. Now, I'm not picking on Oracle, but I'm going to use Oracle as an example here. In fact, I think Oracle lays out their financial results in a very easy to read and understand fashion. Now, most vendors will do just what Oracle is doing here. They will show their revenue results by segment. There are 4 segments here. Think of segments as profit centers. Now, vendors are very much like you, like end users. Your end user organizations care very much about how do revenues and expenses look quarter over quarter, year over year. Vendors are no different. So here's what the example is. Now, this is from last year. And when Oracle closed their first half end, this is how they looked. Now, this looks like it's more than a year ago, but Oracle's fiscal year ends May 31st. So if the fiscal year ended May 31st of 2024, their first half ended November of 2023. Okay, there you go. That's what they publish on their website in the investor relations page. Now, of course, everyone cares about how do I look compared to the previous year. So let's take a look at how they closed the same time the year before, first half. Now, if we compare, here's what it looks like. Okay, well, they did pretty well on their cloud services and license support segment, but they missed their revenue targets on the cloud and on-prem license segment. Also, the hardware segment. Services, okay, they broke even. Well, here's why you want to see this type of thing. Because anytime a vendor misses a revenue target, they're super hungry to catch up the next quarter, and especially hungry to catch up by the time the fiscal year ends. So what you can do in a case like this, let's say you pull any of your vendors' quarterly financial result and you see they've missed a revenue target, and also that's an area that maybe you need something new in. Maybe you're growing. Maybe you have new needs. Well, maybe your contract doesn't end for a year. Well, you could go to the vendor and say, and show them this. No harm showing this. Use it as a negotiation tool. You could say, well, gosh, I'm sorry. It looks like you kind of missed the boat here on a couple of your revenue segments. We might be able to help you by the time your year end rolls along. Now, our contract doesn't end for a year, but if you could come to the table with a good offer, we might have the appetite to early renew. And if you early renew, this is a big deal because a vendor wouldn't have that early renewal forecast in many cases. So this is a brand new deal to them. And it can work out that you would actually do what they call a cancel rewrite. Cancel your current contract, get prorated credit for that remaining year, and rewrite the contract. And hopefully you'll get better discounting, flat pricing, because you're using the year end to their advantage and giving them revenue to book to offset these declines. Now, this is Oracle specifically. So, hey, we care about all vendors. So you want to do this type of an exercise for all your vendors. And it's important to know a very key thing. When do these vendors' quarter and fiscal years end? Now, sometimes my colleagues even kind of laugh at me. What I do, I take this slide and I actually even have it printed on little 6x8 cards. I bring them when I go to conferences. If I go visit a client on site, I update this every quarter. Now, I am in the process of actually updating this. This is from February. Not much has changed, but I'm having this validated by a research team we have here to be sure I'm accurate. The one change that will be in the next version, it will have a note that Informatica is being acquired by Salesforce. Now, it's not official yet, but that's in the works. Now, let me tell you a tip about this. Now, it's great to manage and maintain this because this is very key to one of the tactics that can be used. And the beauty of this is it isn't going to be something that a vendor doesn't know you're doing. But a vendor likes it when you do this. Vendors are quarter and year end driven. And you can simply say to them, what would it look like if we could do a quarter end deal with you? What about year end? Now you can always ask us because sometimes, it will be more advantageous to you to hold off till a first half or a year end. And we can tell you by vendor which is going to be better for you. Now, here's my tip for you. Take this and add to it. I've been saying this for years and years and years. Now, keep track in your own little fiscal year-end database, if you will, of all your vendors. Now, sometimes clients say to me, what about if a vendor's privately held, Joanne? I say, well, you can't easily find that. If you Google it, you probably can't find it and can't always trust Google either. So, there's an SEC site where you can actually look for these fiscal year ends. But on privately held companies, you won't find that. Here's what I recommend. Ask in your RFP. Ask in an RFQ, when does your fiscal year end? Most will tell you. BMC, for example, is private, but they have no problem telling people, yeah, it ends in March. Now, one last tip for you on this. As you look at this, you'll probably realize, wow, a lot of our contracts end on the fiscal year end. And that's you probably did a great job negotiating to close on a fiscal year end, or a vendor came to you and offered you a great deal. Now, here's my tip for you. Don't let your contract end on a fiscal year end. Go ahead and negotiate. Use the time to negotiate your deal and close it, sign it on the fiscal year end or before the end. But don't make it, let's use a 3-year deal, for example. Doesn't matter who. Let's use SAP. SAP's fiscal year ends December 31st. Now, let's say that you're working with SAP on some new HANA deal or SAP Rise. It doesn't matter what you're doing. and you've negotiated or renegotiated your contract. And okay, and you've strung it along to December 31st, and now you've got a nice tight contract, good pricing terms. Okay, and you've done a 3-year deal. Well, don't have it end on December 31st. Make it a 39-month deal. Here's why. If you have the contract end a quarter after their fiscal year ends, or even 6 months after, well, now you can use the fiscal year end to your advantage 3 years from now, 3 years from December 31st of 2025. You can now go to SAP or whoever the vendor is and say to them, hey, we're looking at making some changes and maybe adding some more things. We see we've got some trade up opportunities. Now our contract doesn't end until March of 2029, but we know your year ends December 31st, 2028. That's 3 years from 2025. If you came to the table with a good offer, maybe we could early renew and close. And this is very exciting and motivating to vendors. So don't have it end on the fiscal year end. Have it end a quarter after. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Now, I'm also going to send you a standalone slide just so you have it ready. And by the way, I will have a new version of this ready in probably 2 weeks. If you want a new version that adds that Informatica note, happy to send it to you. Just ask your Gartner account team. Give me a couple weeks, though, until it's validated. All right, let's keep rolling. TNT number 6. Now, I am a huge advocate of making sure that there is, and when I talk with clients about process improvements on the procurement side, on the negotiation side, I always stress the importance of that collaborative team approach so that procurement, IT, and finance are working together to ensure that the analysis of the proposal, of the vendor proposal, is customized to be deal specific. Simply put, on financial models, financial analysis tools and models, one model doesn't fit all deals. If you remember back when I was sharing that story in TNT number 2 about asking for all pricing models, that example of the client getting a prepay proposal and then asking the vendor for pay as you go, and then taking the pay as you go 5-year payment stream and calculating NPV, that was leverage because they took into account the time value of money. Multi-year deals and prepays should have an NPV analysis done. Now, I've got a whole workshop on how to use, actually I have 5 different financial models for negotiation leverage and bargaining power, as well as cost transparency. If you're interested, talk to your Gartner team about that, and we could do a couple virtual sessions and I can walk you through some. It really adds some oomph to your negotiation process planning and oomph to the negotiation itself. Vendors do not see this coming in most cases. Your vendor sales teams hear it a lot. You're too high. That's too expensive. You need to lower the price. Lower the price. Give me deeper discounts. Often that goes, they might listen, but it kind of goes in one ear and out the other. Now, you've got a nice, beautiful model that's easy to understand. You want to keep it simple. That shows what perhaps you should cost, what it should cost. Then you can use that as a powerful negotiation tool. Let me mention something to you on a should cost model. So a lot of times people think, well, gosh, aren't should cost models is really, very complicated, intensive models where there's things like raw material costs. Absolutely. It can absolutely be that. But think of what the title of it is. Should cost. You can make it simple. just show them in a counteroffer what should it cost. Quick example for you. I was helping a client with a SaaS implementation and training proposal. So what had happened is it was bundled up. Now I said, I know this vendor pretty well. I have a strong feeling when you insist that they unbundle it, that you're going to see that everything was front loaded. Now I asked them, the implementation side of it, I doubt you would be doing a full implementation day one, quarter one. I mean, even year one. They said, no, it's going to be 2 years. We're going to roll this out over 2 years. I said, this is fabulous that we know that. Now let's get them to unbundle the bundle and itemize. And it's a simple way to get them to do it. You can say, there's no way that finance can do the CapEx OpEx impact. In fact, we treat implementation as CapEx and SaaS as OpEx. So you're going to have to lay this out and itemize for us. Otherwise, finance won't sign off on it to take it for official approval. Whenever a vendor knows that finance is involved, they know they've got to be more transparent. Let me continue on with my story now on the should cost model. So when they did unbundle and showed the line item pricing, sure enough, all the implementation cost was front loaded. They were paying about $700,000 the first year for some products that wouldn't be rolled out or in production or even customized until year 2. We took the vendor's unbundle proposal, replicated it, threw it in Excel, removed the $620,000 year 1, and it showed what it should cost to be $600K lower. Procurement leader brought our CFO in as a negotiation buddy. And it was powerful because it was clear that they were charging too much. Why would you pay for implementation year 1 or the products, year 1, if you're not going to have the implementation and customization done till year 2? You wouldn't. You shouldn't. So what it should cost is $600K lower. Okay. That model gave the procurement team and the CFO a really great negotiation tool. Gives you confidence when you have something like that. Now you're showing them the numbers, and numbers speak loud, more so than just saying it. So get in the habit of doing that. If you want to see some simple should cost examples, happy to share these with you on a call. So the point here is that I'm also emphasizing is make sure your vendors know that finance is involved in our process. Boy, you gotta lay this out and make it transparent, or we can't take it past finance. And vendors know that. Okay. TNT number 7. I often feel kind of sad when I'm talking with clients about some of their contracts, multi-year in particular, because the perception by many clients, not everybody, but many, is that, yeah, you know what? We overbought. We haven't even implemented this or even thought of it. Things changed around here. That project got delayed. So we're sitting here with $1 million of shelfware. Well, I would say, wait. That is wasted money. Now, I said, what I suggest you do is see what you have a need for and see if you can align that with what the vendor is motivated to sell you. Now, here's what I've done for you. I've actually given you these checklists. And my recommendation, I know everybody's busy, but quarterly, if you can engage with your stakeholders and take a look at some of those contracts that are candidates for early renewal or renegotiation, And again, it's not just when you're growing or not if you have merger, acquisition, divestiture activity going on, not when you have new product needs. It's when you haven't taken full advantage of the contract that you already signed. Let's say you're in the first year of a 4-year agreement and you found that $1 million of software that you bought, let's use software as the example, well, it's sitting there as shelfware because you just, and maybe it was something that happened in your organization. Doesn't matter if it was because you couldn't install or deploy or the vendor maybe oversold. The fact is that $1 million is a waste of money. Now what you can do is you can take a look. You can be the good investigator again, you and IT and business teams as well. So let's take a look at what the vendor has out there to offer. Vendors' roadmaps, vendors' offerings change regularly. You know, they're always having new versions of products and services you have today. They want you to trade up many times. Trade ups are often treated as a new sale. If it's a different SKU, a different part number, a different product ID, there might be some even small functionality enhancements. Well, you would trade up and get deep discounts in many cases because you already own the base product. So they have to discount the trade up more deeply. And now that's a win for you and can be a win for the vendor because they can treat it as a new product sale or a new service sale. So it's always good to see what the new offerings are out there. And when you find it's a win-win, now you and the vendor can talk about taking that contract where that $1 million of software or products or services, doesn't matter what it is, was never used. So you could say, look, we just never got around to using it. Or, boy, you know what? You included that and we didn't know if we wanted it and we just have never used it. We've calculated that it's $1 million that we have wasted here. Can we talk about rewriting the contract? You giving us credit for that shelfware, and we can take a look at some of your new offerings. That can be a win-win. So never feel like you're stuck. Now, I'm not going to promise you that you can always renegotiate these contracts and it end up being advantageous to you both. But again, if you don't ask, you don't get. So ask and see what can happen. Again, vendors often don't like multi-year deals to even go to the end of term. Because if they do, how are they selling the new products and services? They aren't. Vendors have told me, I was talking to a vendor at one of our conferences not too long ago. I always like to ask vendors at our conferences. We usually have them all as sponsors and they showcase their products and services. And I tell them what I do. And I say, I'm interested. Do you, you like multi-year agreements? And most will say, yeah, we do. We really do. But this one vendor, it was sales manager, said what I do is I have my sales teams, we sign multi-year agreements, but 18 months into the 3-year agreement, I have my sales team start going to the client saying, here's what we can do for you to actually early renew or rewrite the contract. You just have to make sure it's clear that they've given you prorated credit for the remainder of the contract as you rewrite the new one. Okay, let's move to TNT number 8. Now, if you recall, back in TNT number 4, where I was showing you the Oracle example of looking at the quarterly financial results in the investor relations website, I mentioned that that's only one website page within a vendor's website. You can find out so much great information. It's unbelievable what you can find in there. Now, it takes time. You got to do some digging. And for some of your key vendors, some of those that are high spend, high risk, your strategic vendors and partners? Well, what I would do is I would delegate this out. If you've got a vendor management team, great team to be actually going in and taking a look at some of these key things. Now, for example, what are the new products and services announcements? What are you end of lifing? Extremely important. It's also great because sometimes you can see the restructuring of the leadership within an organization. You can actually see all those leaders or all those executives that report to the CEO. And many times there are restructures going on, reorgs. So you want to see that so you know what's changed. Now, back when, and I hate to even bring COVID up, but back when COVID was happening, I would encourage every client to grab the statements made in the websites where quite often a CEO or a leader of an organization would say, we're here to partner with you during this difficult time, engage with your sales team so we can help you through this. I would, and today you will find those kinds of statements. Some are saying, we have some volatility going on, market volatility, economic uncertainty during these periods. We're here to work with you. Grab that, capture it, use it, and show your local sales team, gosh, can you show me how you're doing that for us? Very powerful. The other thing that is great to do is to be sure that you know when a vendor is acquiring or divesting. If they're divesting products that you own, you want to know about that. The most important thing to do when a divestiture is going on by a vendor is to be sure from an asset management standpoint, you've captured all the entitlement information that you have with that vendor before it's divested to someone else. Nice, tight asset management, proof of entitlement documentation. Now let's talk about acquisitions. The minute or the day that you read about a vendor being acquired, that's time to go to the vendor. Now let's use the Informatica being acquired by Salesforce announcement. You could go to Informatica today, say, we're going to ask you, what are you willing to do for us? Now we know the acquisition isn't official yet, isn't officially approved. So we want to ask you, would you be willing to cut a new deal? Let's look at some better pricing. Flat pricing during multi-year, price protection language. Many cases, the vendor being acquired, they will jump on this because they don't even know, well, gosh, is the sales team even going to have jobs later? Let's take when Broadcom announced the VMware acquisition. We told everybody, go to VMware, cut new deals with VMware. And it was happening right and left. When IBM acquired Red Hat, IBM's a vendor I cover. I also cover Broadcom, VMware. When IBM acquired Red Hat, well, I told everybody, go to Red Hat, see what kind of deal you can cut. Now, you don't want to wait too long because there'll be maybe 2-3 months while the acquisition is being formally approved. There'll be a short period of time, a window of time, because the acquiring vendor will then tell the vendor that's being acquired, no more unless we approve, no more renegotiation. So get in early and you'll find that it's a real big win for you. Okay. TNT number 9. Now, I mentioned you can find in vendor websites when there are executive leadership changes quite regularly, but you won't see the reporting structure for your region, for your organization. So I always say, get in the habit of asking your sales team, find out, hey, did our client executive, we want to make sure we know who that is, or our managing director. Who is your sales manager? Now, often a procurement leader might say to me, gosh, won't the local sales team get mad at me though if I'm asking that because aren't they going to assume we're just going to escalate? I said, well, if they're getting mad at you, maybe they're not planning to be as transparent as they should. So it keeps them on their toes. But use your C-level execs as power for you if they're comfortable with you doing so. Say, you know what? My CIO always likes to know the reporting structure because sometimes my CIO wants to talk to the VP of sales. And sometimes my CFO wants to talk with the VP of finance. So would you please let me know the names of these people? This is great stuff. It's kind of like when you're buying a car. You know, you go in and you buy a car and your salesperson says, well, I got to run and ask my manager. Oh, I got to go run and ask finance. You know, when I'm buying a car, I tell the salesperson, I make sure it's the end of the month, end of the year, pretty close, because I know they got to move those cars off the lot. And I know that is a big, big month, a big date for the sales team, just like IT vendors. But I say, look, I don't have time to monkey around here. You know, I got a few days here and I'm looking at some of your competitors and I say who the competitors are. And I say, but, you know, let's bring in your sales manager and your VP of finance. Let's talk about all these things now. And, you know, let's not mess around. And they do it. And it works beautifully. Well, you want to do the same. Because why should the deal maker be sitting behind the scenes? They're crafting the deal, giving it to your sales team on the IT side, and they're selling it to you. Well, I want to talk to the deal maker. So this is a great thing to know. Get the names. Now, last but not least, and I know we're getting toward the end of time, and I don't know if we'll have time for questions. If you have any, please reach out to your Gartner account team, and they can send the questions. And if I can answer via written response, I will. Otherwise, we'll have a call. Last but not least, you have to make sure in order to execute this cheat sheet effectively that you're building in enough time to execute these powerful tips and techniques. And one thing you can do here is you can actually use a guide, and this is my last gift to you. And these are all in the attachment section of what you're seeing here on our website there for this webinar. This gives you a nice guide to proactively plan. What should you be doing 12 months out, 9 months out, 6 months out, 3 months? Build in that final negotiation phase within that 3-month period. And now you'll have time to bring in your CFO, your CIO, have time to escalate above the local sales team, have time to actually bring in other roles and other people within your organization and educate them so you've got a powerful negotiation team. I tell people this all the time. For your bigger deals, make sure you have a dress rehearsal. Vendors do this all the time. You want to do the same. Give it a try during that final negotiation phase. I always like to end my sessions with a wrap. This is the full-blown cheat sheet with the bulleted action items to follow for each. Think of using this as an agenda when you have your negotiation kickoff meeting to see which ones of these you're going to think will be powerful to use with each and every vendor. So I'm going to turn this back over to you, Jillian, and I want to thank everybody. I hope you found this to be a great session with tons of value. I sure loved presenting it to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Joanne. We are at time, but we had an overwhelming amount of people asking one question. So I am just going to sneak that one in real quick if we can. And the question was, it is right